Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and I realized I haven't really done much of a follow-up on 2.6.1 and kind of my impressions of where things are at. So I want to take you through just a little bit of that and just kind of give you a rundown on how things are in this current release and just general impressions. So starting off with the big one, stability overall is something that I think is really improved upon. The game isn't crashing a whole lot. I'm getting increased frame rates. I mean, everything about the overall experience of just playing in a smoothness for me is better. Mega Map is interesting, so if you want to get in and actually try some things with like, Free Flight or Vandal Swarm, when you're just basically doing single-player types of things, it is really nice with the lower loading times. There's some weird experiences as far as like audio coming in that doesn't really correlate to the loading, but again, that's pretty minor and doesn't really have an impact on much of anything at all. Now, the game does some weird things right now. Like, for some reason, it feels like it's really likely to just swap my joysticks at random. You know, I'm on a double joystick. So sometimes my input that's typically on my left hand will end up on my right hand. And there used to be a command where you could go in on the console and actually just switch them. But now I actually have to have two different alternative keybinds that are basically mirror images of each other that I can just import depending on whatever mood the game is currently in. The changes in the environment are all pretty good. Like, for example, I like to be able to visit the new Moon Cell, and it's kind of nice to see when you're out in the persistent universe. The changes to the Arena Commander maps look really nice as well, especially Dying Star. You know, it's more atmospheric. There's more asteroids floating around. The experience of flying on those maps is nice. It kind of has a nice balance. It draws you in a little bit more. It's just more immersive. Some things that are kind of busted right now, like the party system appears to be kind of broken and not really keeping parties together effectively. Now, I haven't really had a whole lot of experience with this just because I haven't played as much over the last couple, weeks with a party. But I'm hearing that it's a problem for a lot of people, and I have had issues of my own the few times that I've tried to do it together. My hands down biggest issue right now is with the pip system. And basically, your pips are not lining up with where your bullets are actually going. You know, you can see your the projectiles leaving your ship and not going where the pip is supposed to be. And that's causing some very real issues when you're actually in combat. And that's something that's a problem for everybody, but it kind of gets a little bit more problematic based on the type of weapons that you're using. You know, if you're using something like tarantulas, you know, they're really slow-firing weapons, so you may not necessarily have the same tracking ability. You know, whereas somebody that's using like badgers, you know, you're going to be able to see the bright red laser constantly kind of going in a certain direction. You can make the adjustments that you need to. So unless you're really paying attention to the harder to see, projectile on a slower firing thing like a tarantula or a broadsword or something like that, landing shots right now is a big problem. The other part about landing shots that's a problem is more for joystick people, and that's the ESP system that's currently in place. It almost feels like, and I talked about this a little bit in the roundtable, and somebody put it perfectly, like, you know, two opposite sides of magnets or the same side of magnets pushing against each other. When you go to actually line up your shot in your ship, it feels like it pushes you off of where you need to be in order to land shots. So you're fighting harder to actually land shots on your target. That makes using, dual joysticks or even a single joystick right now, if you're using it to aim, a problem. So that aligned with the pips means landing shots is a pain in the ass. And so you can fly around and really enjoy the new flight model, but actually doing any damage becomes a big, kind of a big factor. Other than that, though, they did some things to the weapons that I liked. Like, for example, they brought in the muzzle velocity of weapons closer together, meaning that you have the possibility to diversify your your loadouts a little bit better, meaning that there's more variety out there. You know, so for example, instead of me using 4 tarantulas on my Super Hornet, I can use 3 tarantulas and the Combine on the back, and then you get the option of actually landing shots altogether because the pips become a lot closer. So that's a step in the right direction, and I think we're going to see people more confident in using different types of weapons now, but until the pip system is actually fixed, it becomes a problem even to test that out. Another big issue right now is not being able to rebind weapon groups. It's something that's kind of been ongoing, and while you can use the MFD screens to actually, look and see, you can't really control them in any given way. It seems like you can kind of force it so you can shoot all weapons on one weapon group, but it doesn't even always work that way, but you can't unselect some. So it's a really odd experience. And personally, what I would really like to see them do is until it persists, until it works consistently, because even before, you had to reset it after every single death, and that was a frustrating experience. It would be nice if you were able to set weapons groupings in the ship customization screen. Damage output on the weapon seems to be reworked, and most of them seem to be a little bit lower. Now, it is a little bit odd, though, because ships don't necessarily seem to be dying any slower than we were in 2.6, so it seems like the overall HP may have come down, but the overall damage output's come down, and it ends up in a kind of a similar output. There's something odd, like the scoring isn't the same, and the scoring was directly correlated to the damage that was being done. So something's a little bit different, even though the overall experience isn't really that bad. Now, the ship's shields are really noisy right now, especially noticeable on the Super Hornet, but they're visually noisy. You get the distortion across your screen when they're recharging, when you're taking damage. Sometimes it just seems like it's doing it randomly. But what it does is it makes it really hard to see through them at times, which isn't great for when you're in combat. Overall, I would say the updated flight model is probably the most significant change that they put into this, new release. Because in 2.6, we saw that the speeds were dropped significantly. And then in 2.6.1, the speeds were brought up sort of between 2.6 and 2.5. The speeds overall feel about right for most ships. I think that there's enough diversity between the ships without totally resulting in nothing but jousting or circle strafing, so that's kind of cool. But I think they're both still present, and they both have their, beneficial times and, what you need to do. But you get the option to kind of play in different ways right now. Personally, for me, this is about my favorite flight model because it does feel balanced between the slower, more focused on aiming, and the faster, more focused on flying. It kind of gets a little bit of both worlds there. Now, afterburner and boost fuel seem to be a little bit better balanced now. You're not really burning through it at the same rates that you were before, which was incredibly fast. And when it was gone, it felt like, okay, you are now screwed. It does seem like that you continue to burn afterburner fuel when you're up to cruise speed. But I personally think that once you get to max speed, it should be zero output. You've got the inertia behind you to help continue along that path. Now, I need to test that further because it might be a little bit something tied to my joystick, but I haven't read anything about them getting rid of that piece. The Vanguard is not in a good place right now. It was changed. It went from underpowered to very durable and very powerful and somewhat agile, and then it kind of got tweaked down a little bit, and it became a little bit more slow and a little bit more sluggish. Now it's just totally outclassed. It's a heavy ship, so it should be driftier, it should be slower, it should be less agile than the more dedicated fighters. But if it stays as is, the long range and durability of this ship, the selling points of this ship, won't matter at all, since everything else can totally evade it from any damage. So, if you are... I guess if you have a ship, you need to go a long ways, and once you get there, you need to do some fighting. Well, if the ship that you're taking to get you there a long way can't do anything to the targets that are present, there's no point in going on that journey in the first place. So I think CIG needs to really look at the Vanguard and continue to tweak it and say internally, we know what this ship's role needs to be. It's an expensive ship. It's a big ship to help facilitate the benefits of it. But it still needs to retain the core purpose of the ship. Otherwise, if they're just saying that it's capable of going long range, then they're basically just saying this is a transport ship. And that's not what the Vanguard is meant to be. The Super Hornet and the Sabres do feel like they're really well balanced now. There's kind of a... The Super Hornet feels very durable. The output is great. The Sabre is agile and responsive, and it does quite a bit of damage, but it's not very durable at all. The Gladius is even less durable, but it flies like a total dream. The M50 is kind of in that category. So I think the ships are starting to fall into their lines, but I think there needs to be continual adjustments if we want to see this continue to play out the way we need it to at the end of the day. So those are kind of my overall impressions of where we're at in 2.6.1. I say that, most of this was focused on kind of what I envision as the issues that are present. Overall, I think it's a good release. I really do. There's some changes that need to be made. There's some gameplay quality of life issues that need to be addressed pretty quickly. But as far as the direction they're taking us, I think it's a net positive. So please share your opinions of where we're at today. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Coming up soon, we'll have the Hornet Q&A review. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Take care.